السلام عليكم. يسعد مساكم جميعا. Let me first welcome Dr. Abeer Madini to our today's workshop. So welcome all to our today's workshop, which is going to be about writing a research article. So the fundamentals of writing research article. So today's workshop is going to be presented by Dr. Abeer Madini. Dr. Abeer Madini is an Associate Professor of Applied Linguistics at ELI, and she is also the Dean, the Vice Dean of College of Tourism. So this is the first workshop in our series, graduate student series. So we'll keep the questions and comments at the end of the presentation. So please, let's welcome Dr. Abeer Madini. So Dr. Abeer Madini, the floor is yours. You may start now.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Basim. And I would like to welcome all of you for today's session, writing a research article, The Fundamentals. Okay, why it's freezing? Okay, so what is actually the objectives of today's workshop? Actually, to familiarize you. So we will look at the structure of the research article. What is the structure of the research article? And also to give you advice on how to write a paper for publication. Also give you some tips on the publication process. Okay, so these are the objectives of today's workshop. Okay, writing a scientific literature. So when we actually want to write an article for publication, it's not an easy task. So you find yourself burdened with lots of, so how can I start? Where should I look for the information? How can I organize all the information into one? So how it's like, how can I write it correctly? So you ask yourself all of these questions. So today, actually, I will introduce you to the structure of the paper. So this is actually mainly the manuscript or the paper structure that you will find in all the papers. Okay, so when you actually want to write a paper, you will find a title, authors, abstract, and keywords. And actually, we will see that these are actually need to be accurate and informative for effective indexing and searching. So we need this part, actually, the title, the authors, the abstract, and the keywords, in order actually for better or effective indexing and searching. So the first thing, actually, when you search for any kind of article you want, you usually search for a title or by the name of the author, or sometimes by keywords. So this part actually help you for effective indexing and searching. Whereas the other part, which is the main text, so we call it the IMRAD. IMRAD actually stands for, the I is for the introduction, M is for the methods, and R for results, and D is for discussion or conclusion. But each one of these has a distinct function, and we will go actually by all of these sections one by one. Then finally, we will write the acknowledgement. So when I say actually here, when I say introduction is like a literature review. In most of the articles, sometimes, you know, we write a small introduction, but some of them, they actually say when you actually write an introduction, is like a small literature review about your research. So when I say introduction is like a small or like a small literature review, okay? Then we do have an acknowledgement, and then references, and then if you do have any supplementary material that you used. So this is basically the structure. So let's go by one by one of these sections. So let's look at the title first. Okay, title actually is a label suitable for indexing by abstracting. So actually, okay, so it's actually hanging or hook type. So usually, it's very hard to choose a title for an article because it's you need to look for a hook title, okay? Something catchy. Okay, so why is actually important? Why it's important to choose a title? A title actually is read by thousands of people. Only few, if any, will read the full paper, unfortunately. Okay, so usually, when you look at the title, you first, sorry, if you look at any certain any article, you look for the title. So not all of the people actually read the whole paper. So they read the title first. If it's actually matching what you're actually looking for, then you will start reading the article itself. So what is actually the rule of this? There is a fewest possible words that adequately describe the content of the paper. So these are actually the words that you use. It's not random, okay? So you use actually the words that best describing or adequately describe the content of the paper. So usually it's less than 20 words. So don't exceed the 20 words number. يعني, when you have a very long title, this is not really effective. So what is actually the problem of the titles that I usually face is that not too short. So you need to be specific. Okay, so it's not too short, you have to be specific, and also not general, and also not too long, because it's not an abstract. Sometimes, you know, some students, they used to write a very long title, because you have to remember that this is actually not an abstract. So you have to use some key words there that describe your paper. For example, if my paper is about, let's say, maybe hearing impairment students, okay? So that means that I'm looking, this is my title that I'm looking for, okay? So for example, listening for hearing impairment students. So I'm actually looking for a very specific, but not very كمان specific. يعني I don't say مثلا the test that I'm using, for example, or how I collect the data. So I give myself also some room, okay? Yes, so it must be, yes, attractive, specific, not too general and not too long. Okay, let's move on to the authors. Actually, when you actually look at the article, you first see the title, then you see the authors, okay? So actually, who the authors? Actually, these are the ones who takes the academic responsibility of the results being presented. So by writing your name, you actually take the academic responsibility of the results, okay? But these names, do you think, are they random? Yani, the order of these names, do they mean something? Is it just an order of names? So when you actually look at the article, okay, you see the authors, the people who actually write the paper, okay? So you see maybe first one, maybe sometimes there is one person who wrote this, sometimes, you know, maybe 6 people who wrote this. Yes, so actually they mean the order of these names means something. Okay, so the main author actually, which is the first author will be used when the article is cited, okay? The middle author, okay, the people in the middle, actually, it could be 2, 3, 6, 8, depend on the study. So all must be contributed in the work. For example, maybe someone collected the data, maybe someone maybe give supply funding, maybe someone, so it means that you contributed in this work in a way or another, okay? The group leader actually is the last author, okay? So for example, if a group of people, okay, so they conducted a research, then the last one actually of this group, this is the group leader, okay? Okay, for example, so what do you think? If you are an MA student, okay, and you do have a supervisor, so what are you gonna be, the main author or the group leader? What do you think? No, actually, you're gonna be the main author, yeah? So because this is your work. You are the person who actually provided the idea, who actually worked on this. Your supervisor actually is the person who actually leads you towards this. So your supervisor will be the last name, the group leader. So if you are only two, let's say, you and your supervisor, your name will be first as a main author. If you are actually fully contributed, if your supervisor, for example, is contributed fully on this work, her name will be the first one. But usually, okay, if you are like an MA student or a PhD student, so your name will be the first name. So you are the main author and then your supervisor. Okay, then we do have something called a corresponding author. Usually, if you actually ask for example, you emailed the journal, okay, so they ask for who is actually the corresponding author. The corresponding author is actually the person who contact the journals and reply to questions. So usually they ask who is the corresponding author. So that means it's the one who actually contact the journal and reply to the questions. Okay? So sometimes, for example, if you and your supervisor, you have to discuss who's gonna be the corresponding author. If the supervisor want to have this contact the journal and reply to the questions, so she gonna be the corresponding author, okay? Okay, so after actually the author, we do have something called the affiliation. Affiliation is actually the institution that pays the author for his or her work, okay? For example, the name of the university, the department, or the research center. For example, the English Language Institute, King Abdulaziz University, okay? Sometimes, you know, people, some students and also some colleagues actually, when they write King Abdulaziz University, so they write it with a hyphen. King Abdulaziz University, Abdulaziz, so it's actually one word, okay? So you write it as one word. You have to be careful about this, okay? So you name, for example, the department, and then your university, okay? So this is basically the institution one would put under one's name in a publication. So you have to have an affiliation. Yes, yeah. I'm talking here about students because this workshop is particularly for graduate students. So that's why I'm giving examples to student supervisor. But of course, if we are like colleagues who are actually participating into this, so that will be different. For example, if this person for example, originates the ideas and then distributed the work. So she could be the first author, okay? And then we can have middle authors and then the group leader. And you can have also an agreement on this, okay? Okay, so let's give an example here. Of course, this is actually the title, Relevance of Emoticons in Computer-Mediated Communication, Context and Overview. As you can see here, we do have two names, Tanimu, Jibril, and then one, and Mardizia, Abdullah, okay? So this is actually one also. So what does actually this number means? Okay, this, as you can see also, yes, so both of them here in this context, both of them, they are main authors because Tanimu and, okay, so both of them, they are main authors and also they have the same affiliation. As you can see here, yes, they share the same affiliation. So as you can see here, Department of English, Faculty of Modern Languages and Communication, University Putra, Malaysia. Yeah, so this is actually from Malaysia. So yeah, so as you can see here, these are both of them, they are main authors and also they share the same affiliation. And as you can see here, they wrote the correspondence. Who actually the correspondence here? Yes, the number they use, the number is actually referring to the same affiliation. 1 and 1, it means that both of them here, they do have the same affiliation. But the way they wrote it here, Tanimu and Mardizia, okay, so that means that they do have that it could be that both of them, they are main authors, okay? Here, for example, correspondence, okay, correspondence, sometimes, you know, they write it down. يعني when they say correspondence, يحطوا كده correspondence, بعدين يحطوا الاسم, okay, they add the name. So they add Tanimu Ahmed Jibril. So this is actually the correspondence, the person who actually contacts the journal, okay? Sometimes, okay, they don't say it here or they write it down as correspondence. They put here actually like a star. Beside the name, they put a star, okay? So that's actually an indicator that this is actually a corresponding author, okay? Okay, so let's look at the abstract, okay, now. It's actually a summary of a manuscript. It's between 200 and 300 words, okay? So this is actually, the number of words actually is specified by the journal. And each journal, okay, they do have a specific number of words for the abstract. But normally it's between 200 and 300 words. Okay. Actually, what is actually the goal of the abstract? Why do we write an abstract? Is actually allows the reader to decide to read the paper or not. So for example, as I said before, if you want to have, let's say, you are looking for an article, you read the title first. If you see that the title is matching your interest, then you read the abstract, yes? So then you decide to read the paper or not, okay? Then you state the principal objectives, the aim and scope. You have to write the objective of your paper, okay, in the abstract. So why are you actually conducting this research, okay? Maybe to highlight a certain population, maybe to find maybe a gap in the literature. So you have to write the aim and scope. Then you describe the methodology that you employed, يعني not in a very much detail. يعني you have to remember that it's only 200 or 300 words. So you have to only give a simple sentences about actually what actually you used, what did you employ in your research. Then you summarize the results. You put maybe 2 sentences about the findings, your findings, what did you find? Okay. And then you state the principal conclusion. You put like a 1 sentence conclusion. Okay. So this is basically the structure of the abstract. Okay. What is actually important to note? In any paper or manuscript, you can find the aims. You can find the aims in 3 different places. So where can I find the aim of the research? I find it in the abstract, in the introduction, and also I find it in the discussion. Okay? And also a conclusion, I can find the conclusion also in 2 different places, in the abstract, okay, and also in the discussion. Okay? So this is actually where I can find the aim and also the conclusion of my research. Okay, so we do have actually 2 different types of abstract. It could be either structured or unstructured or non-structured abstract, and I will show you the difference in a moment. طبعا structured and unstructured abstract both follow the IMRAD format. The IMRAD, which is an introduction, methodology, and results and discussion. Okay, so this is what we call the IMRAD format. طبعا what is actually, I will show you the difference between structured and unstructured, but let's look at the common mistakes in the abstract. Actually, most of the common mistakes here is that too much background or methods information. Okay, so you have too much background. Remember, you have only 200 or 300 words. Also, maybe you find that one of the mistakes that when you add actually a figure or an image, this is not the place for any images or figures. References to literature, you don't refer to literature here. If it's like, if it's something particular that you actually based your research on, maybe you can refer to that particular author, but you don't put any references to the literature, figures or images. Also, be careful about the use of abbreviations and acronyms. For example, if I say, I conducted this study in the ELI, okay, nobody will know, okay, what's ELI? So ELI actually, so I have to say ELI, English Language Institute, and then I put between brackets, I put the ELI, okay? So I have to remember that people sometimes, you know, when they read it, they don't know what I'm referring to. So I have to be careful about the use of abbreviations and acronyms. This is actually a structured abstract. Maybe the picture, it's not clear, but you have to see that this is actually it's specified. Yani it's they actually classified it into 4 parts. يعني background, methods, results, conclusions. Okay. In some majors, actually, they use this kind of abstracts, but we normally use this type of abstract, which is an unstructured abstract. So unstructured, so all of them, as you remember, as I said before, both of them, they actually follow the IMRAD format. The introduction, methodology, results, and conclusion, but they write it differently. So they actually, this is actually the unstructured. As you can see here, for example, they use some terminologies like information and communication technology. So they added ICT. ما كتبوا ICT without actually explaining what is ICT, okay? Even here, computer mediated communication, CMC, okay? Then if you want to refer to it again, you don't have to write it again, but at least you actually mentioned it before, okay? Okay, so let's move on to keywords. Keywords, okay, so it's actually the SEO, your article. So what is SEO? Actually, it's a search engine optimization. Usually when you actually write the keywords, actually, what is actually the purpose of writing the keywords? Actually, it helps you to ensure that your article appears higher in the results returned by research and by search engines. So for example, when you, these are actually the, for example, let's say if I want to do a research about flipped classroom, okay? So this is actually, I use this, okay, as my search, as my word, okay? I use it in the, as a keyword in the search engine, such as Google, PubMed, etc. So this means actually, it's, يعني, when you actually use the keywords wisely, you attract more readers and you actually gain higher visibility in the academic community, and also potentially increase your citation. People will cite your words. For example, if I said, if I'm actually conducting a research about, let's say, flipped classroom, okay? So, and I search for this, for example, flipped classroom in Saudi Arabia, okay? So these actually my keywords, flipped classroom, Saudi Arabia, okay? So then all the articles will appear. So this actually attracts me as a reader to look more for this, and also increase the number of citation of these articles. So that means, okay, this is, maybe this is actually a useful article that I want that I will include in my research. Okay. Okay. Let's do this. This is actually a small exercise for you now. As you can see, I want you to look at this. This is actually, it's from an article, okay? So I want you to look at this. So this is actually basically what we already talked about. The title, the authors, the affiliation, the abstract. Okay, just wait a minute. Okay, so I want you to go to minty.com. Okay, so, and I want you actually to write this code. Okay, 5396306. Okay, so I want you to think about what is the type of the abstract you just saw. Is it structured or unstructured? Okay, so you go to minty.com. Okay. Okay, and this is actually the, okay, so this is actually the password. Okay, so until now we have 11. Okay, so what do you think? What the type of the abstract that you just saw in the PowerPoint? Is it structured or unstructured? Okay, you can go to minty.com and then you add the code 5396306. Okay. Okay, excellent. Okay, good. So it's unstructured. Yes. So about 36 people, they got it right. So it is unstructured. Okay, so let's look back. Let's look back at the, let's go back to this. Okay, have a look again. I will ask you another question. Okay. Huh, are you ready? Okay, so let's go for the next question. Who do you think is the corresponding author? Good, good. Excellent job, excellent job. Okay, so let's go back to the paper. This is an exercise for memory, okay? So, yes, so for those of you, I think most of you, you said that it's the first one, Yaslam As-Saggaf. So how did you know? How did you know that this is actually the corresponding author? Oops, yeah, let's go back. Yes, excellent, excellent. Yes. So as I said before, sometimes, they wrote كلمة corresponding author, so they write the name. Sometimes they don't, okay? So they put like this star to indicate that this is actually the corresponding author. Okay, I have also, my third question is, what do you think, who is the publisher? I'm not saying the name of the journal, I'm saying the publisher. Yes, excellent. Yes. Elsevier. Yes, this is actually the name of the publisher. This is actually the name of the journal. Actually, this is actually all of these information. It's help you even when you actually write for referencing. Excellent. Okay, so let's move on to the introduction. Overall, it's about 500 to 1,000 words. طبعا each journal, okay, they do have a specific number of words, okay? So usually it's between, let's say 3,000 to 8,000 words, يعني most commonly, okay? But طبعا sometimes, it's exceed that number, sometimes it's below the number, but usually, يعني most of the journals, they do have between 3,000 to 8,000 words, okay? So sometimes they tell you, okay, the number of each section specifically, okay? If they don't, okay, so usually it's between 500 to 1,000 words. Okay, so what is actually the role of the introduction? You start with a broad information on the topic, okay? You actually, let's say, you say, actually you choose, or you already chose the topic, you actually take a broad information about it, and then you go look at the previous research being conducted on that particular topic until you actually narrow it down, you get a narrower background information. What do I mean? You go from broad to specific. Okay, so for example, education, maybe teaching writing in Saudi Arabia, to something very specific. Okay, so when actually you write an introduction, you have to think about your hypothesis or research question. Okay, some majors, they do have to write hypothesis. Some of them, they do write hypothesis or research questions. You write actually the summary of the problem, okay, and then the needs of the study, and then the focus of the study, okay. So what is actually your research question or hypothesis? As I said before, in the introduction, you actually write also the need of the study. Why you actually conducting the study? Why do you think there is a need for further research? You have to ask yourself this when you actually conduct a research. Why are you actually doing this? How you gonna conduct it? Who gonna be your participants? Okay, all of these questions. Common mistakes in the introduction, it could be too much or not enough information. You don't actually specify the gap. Why actually you conduct this research? How you gonna add, what you gonna add in the field of research about this topic? If, for example, 100 people already search for this, what you gonna add? Okay, maybe there is an unclear purpose. You don't know what to do. There is no clear purpose of doing it. Sometimes, you know, you list ideas because this is not a place for lists. You have to write it as a paragraph. Sometimes, you know, you do have most of the common mistakes also when you have a confusing structure. As I said, you have to go from broad, then you narrow it down until you actually make it more narrow and specific. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the methods and materials. Okay, so why we actually put a method or material in our research? Okay, so it's provide all the experiment information and the instruction on exactly how to repeat the experiment, subjects including. Okay, okay, so for example, let's say if I want to conduct a research, okay, the first thing, okay, I want to see that how they actually conduct this research, what the methods that they used, how you're gonna do it differently then. So you have to think about the sample preparation technique. If you are, for example, let's say from science field, okay, you have to prepare your samples. Okay, so what actually the kind of techniques that you used to prepare your sample? Okay, the sample origins, field site description. You have to describe your field. Okay, the site that you use. For example, if I'm conducting my research in the ELI, the English Language Institute, I have to describe this place. That, for example, this place is actually using a modular system. Each model is about, let's say, 7 weeks. What kind of exams or that we used, what kind of books do they use? So I have to search for what's actually the site that I'm using. The data collection protocol, okay, how actually I collected the data. Did I use ethical approval? For example, for most of the graduate students, okay, so they can go to the Deanship of Higher Education to get permission, for example, to collect data for their thesis, okay? Sometimes, you know, they get permission from their college, okay? So, so actually how they collect the data? For example, did you use a survey, questionnaire? Did you, for example, did interviews? Did you do an experiment? Okay, if you conducted an experiment, for example, did you use a pre-test and a post-test? Did you do an intervention in between? Okay, so this intervention, is it for how long? For example, did you do the intervention, for example, for 7 weeks? So all of these details. Did you use any kind of programs, computer programs that you used? Description of equipment and its use. For example, if you use certain kind of equipments, maybe, yeah, if you use, I don't know, maybe for science students, maybe they use some chemicals, maybe they use some specific instruments, maybe, let's say if you use a particular program, let's say مثلا concordance, maybe you used, so you have to be very specific. So whenever someone who want to conduct similar study as you, okay, so they know what to do, how they're gonna do it. Okay, so please give us very particular details. Okay, so what is actually the common mistakes when you actually write a methods and materials? Yes, specific machines that you used, specific equipments, computer programs. Be very specific about this. So the common mistake is actually too little information about the experiment techniques or methods. The information from introduction, so actually, or maybe you put some results or sources of error reported. You don't even here, you don't report any findings yet, not yet, okay? So here you actually describe, it's more like describing and specifying the methods that you used or the materials that you used. Okay, let's move on to the results. Results actually is the objective presentation of experiment results. Is the summary of data. Remember, this is not a discussion. So what do I mean by that? Here in the results, actually, you only reporting the findings. Okay, so let's say, for example, if you do have a table or a figure, you only explain what did you see. Explain the raw data. Okay, so I mean the data that you do have in the tables, okay, or the figure, we call them raw data. Okay, so you take these raw data and report them. You just say, okay, for example, this is higher than this. This is more significant than this. You only report what do you find, but you don't justify. Don't say why you find this, because this is yes, this is actually the job of the discussion. That's why I'm saying this is not a discussion. So common mistakes when you actually write in the results, when you put raw data, you put a table or a figure, but you don't explain it. So I don't know what does that mean. Okay, you have to give meaning to these numbers. Okay, what actually the tests you use, how you actually analyzed it, discussion and interpretation of data, how you actually interpret the discussion. And so usually most of the common mistakes is you interpret the data. You don't interpret the data. You only, as I say, report the data. You have here, sometimes you don't put figures or tables. Here actually the place where you put all the figures and tables. Okay, so try to put all the figures and tables. Methods and materials reported. You already talked about the methods and materials you used, so you don't have to repeat them again here. Okay. So as you can see here, okay, so here we can, on the right side you can see the figure, and on the left side you see the table. As you can see here, the caption on the in the table, you wrote the caption on the top of the table. But for the figure, you write it below the figure. Okay, it's very important actually to put a caption for your table or figure. Okay, so so you put in the table, you put it above the table. In the figure, you put below the figure. Okay, let's see the discussion. Okay, you interpret or understand the results. So here is the place where you read between the lines. Okay, so you have to think about these questions. Okay, did the study confirm or deny the hypothesis? If not, did the results provide an alternative hypothesis? What interpretation can be made? Do results agree with other research or source of error? Suggestion for improvement and future research relate to previous research. So when actually here where I put my hypothesis and I try to explain it, why I did this, what did I find? Okay, how is that relevant or different from the research in the literature review? How can I explain the findings that I found? Maybe I refer them to, let's say, a theory, or maybe I refer them to researchers, okay? So here actually I try to put each question or hypothesis in front of me and then try to answer them, okay? Then I put suggestions for improvement and future improvement and future research. Okay. Sometimes, you know, you put limitations of your study. Sometimes, you know, the limitation, it's not necessarily is something bad about your research. A limitation, it's something, yani, for example, let's say if you actually conducted a certain, let's say you did an experiment to a certain population, you cannot say that this is actually applicable to all the Saudi population. Yes, so so that's why the limit, why we write a limitation. It's not to say something about your, yani, bad about your research, or you actually yani, minimizing your ability. It's just to give, بالعكس, this is actually showing how mature are you. Yani, it's like you actually, let's say, you say, okay, this is, so that's why it's not, for example, generalizable to all the population, for example, okay? Okay, so the common mistakes, you combine it with results. Here you don't repeat what you already said. Maybe you just, يعني خلاص, you take the major findings, you actually justify the findings. New results discussed, you don't bring new results. Okay, خلاص, you already added all the results, okay, in the results chapter or section, okay, because we're talking about article here. So you don't actually bring new results. Or maybe you add broad statement because you remember that this is actually very specific. Plus you already, have the findings. Incorrectly discussing inconclusive results. Okay, so you have to discuss like what actually is conclusive about your research. Maybe ambiguous data source, missing information. Okay. Okay. So let's move on to references. So you write the acknowledgement first. The acknowledgement, usually you acknowledge the people that actually helped you in your research, or maybe if you actually conducted the research for a group of people, so you actually thank them, and maybe if someone funded your research, you actually thank them in the acknowledgement. And then we go to the referencing. Referencing is not an easy task at all, okay? So you have to check specific referencing style of journal. In each major, we do have a specific referencing style. For example, in the field of education and humanities, we normally use the APA format. So in some other schools, maybe they use Harvard, maybe they use numerical. So they use actually different styles of referencing. But you should reference whatever referencing style you use, you have to reference peer-reviewed journal articles, abstracts, books. You should not reference non-peer-reviewed works or personal communication. For example, let's say if you take an information from a forum, or this is actually considered as a personal communication or online communication. So this is actually not a useful source. So usually when we look for information, we look at peer-reviewed journal articles, books, okay? Or book chapters, for example. The common mistakes in the referencing, of course, is the format. Yeah, so actually there are some, yes, yeah, I like the gray literature. Yeah, so yeah, there are some actually programs, or let's say, I don't know, maybe softwares, let's say, that like EndNotes and Zotero, I think, they can help you actually make your life much simpler. Mendeley, yes, it's a good suggestion as well. So you can save all the PDF files there. You can choose the APA or, for example, whatever style of referencing that you use. Also help you to correctly cite the work inside the article itself, and also for the referencing as well. And also, recently also, when you want to publish an article, some of the journals, they actually request the DOI number, okay? So it's like a link, okay? So each journal, they do have a DOI number. So you have to add it. Some journals, they ask for this. They say, okay, you have to add the DOI, okay? Figures and tables, equation must be referenced. If you, for example, used a figure, a table of someone's research, yes, actually the DOI, when you actually, this is actually this, Asail, this is actually an exercise for you. If you go and look for any article, okay, and then you see the referencing style, you find something called DOI. Is like a link, it's a DOI number, okay? For some of them, they ask, and if you consider publication, they ask for this. Help with citation. As I said, it's EndNote. We have Zotero. We have Mendeley as well. Yes. So yeah, thank you, Dr. Basim, for the help. It's a digital object identifier. We call it the digital object identifier. Okay. Okay, so things to consider before writing. Let's say, okay, I want to write an article for publication. What should I do? First, I have to choose a journal. Okay, how can I choose a journal? I look for the quality of the journal by the impact factor, and also the instructions to authors, and think about possible reviewers. Who actually gonna review my work? If I wrote this, who gonna look at it? Who gonna review it? Okay, then I will show you what do I mean by impact factor in a moment. Good title and summary. You have to think about a good title, something like a hook, something catchy, okay? Also, you have to think about the authors. Who gonna do this? Who gonna help you? Are you gonna conduct it alone? Is it with your supervisor? Is it with your colleagues? How are you gonna distribute the work? Now that you actually knew the order of the authors, so you have to think about are you gonna be the first, the middle, who gonna be the corresponding, who gonna be the group leader? Okay, all of these, you have to think about this, okay? Okay, the impact factor actually, what actually constitutes a good journal? How are we going to say that this journal is actually a good one? Okay, there is something called impact factor, is the average number of times published paper are cited up to 2 years after publication. And we have something called immediacy index, is the average number of times published paper are cited during the year of publication. طبعا the higher the impact factor, the higher the number is the better. يعني معناته this is a really good journal. طيب, okay, how can I look for this? كيف أنا أبحث? How can I search for a journal for publication? Okay, I do have actually certain websites that could help me. For example, here, Journal Finder, Elsevier. Elsevier is actually for Scopus. We have something called Scopus. We have something called ISI. Okay, ISI actually is referring to an international scientific indexing. Okay, so this is actually it's the representing the quality of the journal. طب how can I say that this is a quality journal? طبعا it depends on bibliometric measures. يعني مثلا زي اللي هو publications, journal citation impact, actual citation impact, كل هذه الأمور. لكن أنا, okay, so for example me, I don't know how to look for this. So I have two things. Web of Science. Web of Science actually helped me to look for ISI journals, and also Elsevier, actually it's helped me also to look for Scopus journals. So I only entered there. I will show you now. Okay, so as you can see here, this is actually called a Web of Science. Let's say here, actually, when you actually search, you search for the journal by ISSN number. كل journal لها ISSN number or title word. Okay, so for example, if I search for Arab World English Journal, for example, okay. So as you can see here, if it appeared to me, that means that it's a good one. It's here, as it said, it's an emerging source citation index. It means it's a good one. Yes. If you actually write something and it doesn't appear, that means that this is not a good one. It's a fake one. It's very important to think about that sometimes there are fake journals, or we call them predatory journals. Okay, so these actually search engines help you, like most of them, they are the Web of Science or Elsevier. You put actually the journal that you want, or maybe sometimes you search for the sometimes even you search for the title. يعني انت what do you want, what do you search for, ايش الميجر تبعك. Okay, also I found this in one of the workshop that I want to share also with you. So this is actually called the open knowledge maps, okay? So here, if I want to write, let's say, teaching writing, okay? So this is actually, the idea of this is actually to give you a map about a certain topic, okay? For example, let's say, usually when you actually look for, or let's say if you want to investigate a certain subject or a certain idea or something, you look actually what's actually the relevant, what is actually related to this topic. For example, let's say if I want to, I want to look at business writing, let's say. So what is actually about business writing? Business writing is a very general topic. I have to make it more specific, or what is actually relevant to this topic. Are there any problems about this in a particular place? Okay, let's see, it's a bit slow. Okay, so as you can see here, it's give you the, let's say here, writing center, because I'm saying teaching writing. So teaching writing is a very broad topic. But the nice thing about it is that, for example, let's say EFL, writing classroom, and then you click on it, then you find lots of open access articles. So this is actually the sign here. As you can see here, the lock, it's unlocked. That means it's an open access. You can access them. So you can see actually a number of, a number of articles that you can actually go and investigate. I hope this is useful. Okay, so this is actually the first thing that you have to think about. You have to look for the journal. Okay, what is actually the journal that I want to publish at? Of course, the title, the originality of the title, okay? And then you have to think about the authors that they're gonna conduct the study with you. Also, you have to think about these things. Okay, so as you can see here, this is only an example for you to see actually the structure of each part. I did this, but you have to go for each journal, you have to look for this information. Okay, so you have to look at the journal title, okay, the journal ISSN number, so that you can look for it, okay. The publisher, like for example, the example that I showed to you, earlier is actually the Elsevier. Also, you have to look at the cost of the publishing, okay. Sometimes, you know, the cost of the publishing, sometimes some publications, they are very, they do have a high cost, yeah. So sometimes, you know, in US dollars, is it by pound? So you have to think about this. Can you afford this? And then you have to look at the number of words. As you can see here, each journal, they do have a different number of words. For example, here, the Australian Journal of Linguistics, they have no word limit, okay? For example, here, let's say here, the critical inquiry in language studies, they have not, they specified by numbers, but they specified by pages. So they say between 25 to 30 pages. Okay, some of them, they are very particular about the numbering of words. For example, actually, I conducted a research with my colleague, and we already did the study, okay? And it was about 5,000 words. And then we were stuck. We didn't know what to do, actually. We searched for certain articles, but we found that the number they asked for is about 7,000. Okay, so that actually limited our options. So to look only for the journals who do have that specific numbering. So that's why I'm saying it's very important to look for the journal first, and then you customized your number of words and these things to the journal. Okay. Also, the final thing to think about is actually the awaiting time. Okay, you have to think about the waiting time. Each journal, they do have a waiting time for decision. So as you can see here, it's a very long time. Most of the quality journals, زي ال ISI and these kind of journals, actually they do have a high number. A number of weeks is very long. يعني عندنا هنا 12 to 23 weeks, 28 weeks, and it could be around and ممكن تاخد sometimes, it's about it could take sometimes, a year to publish in a good journal. So for example, if you are a graduate student, okay, and you are thinking, of course, about your graduation, you have to think about this. You don't send an article for publication without considering this issue, okay? Maybe you want to consider, let's say, participating in a conference first, and then you leave the publication after maybe doing your viva, okay? So that's actually give you more time, okay? And think about the quality of the publishing that you actually gonna do, okay? Okay, and also you have to think about that each journal, they do have a particular template that you have to follow. So they are very specific about the template. Even for example, let's say in the template, they think maybe even the spacing, the font, what actually the font that you use, the signs, the spacing between the lines, all of these things that you have to think about. Yes. So, yes, I will leave some room for questions. I think I'm done. So do you have any questions?
All right, so thank you, Dr. Abeer, for this wonderful, informative presentation. I really, really enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. So now I'm gonna share with you two links. The first one is the evaluation form. Please complete the evaluation form. And the other link is our YouTube channel. So now we'll open the floor for questions. So if you have any questions or comments, you can post them in the chat here, or you can just raise your hand and open your mic, then ask your question. So we still have about 20 minutes. We can have as many questions as we can.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you, Dr. Abeer, for this interesting, important topic for us as graduate students. But I just have a question regarding the literature reviews, like starting to think about the topic for research or to put in a hypothesis. we need to read a sort of literature review. Any advice or any instruction that we can have in regards to the quantity, or like how I can say that or acknowledge that I really get an enough literature review in order to find or in order to find some information regarding the topic that I want to talk about. Thank you.
Okay. I think for this, usually writing a literature review is actually the most difficult part that most of the students actually, they face problem with that. Because, you know, what actually you need to do is that, for example, if you are actually looking for a part, of course, you are looking for a particular topic, okay? So you have to think, you have to look for the pioneers actually in that area first, okay? So who actually the famous people who conducted research about this area? Because you have to, in each area, there are some very famous people who actually conduct research on that area. So that's mean it's, let's say, if I'm talking about, let's say, each topic or even in our field, for example, let's say I'm talking about, for example, error analysis, okay? I have to look for the people who actually conducted research about error. Sometimes, you know, you feel that, okay, this name is actually appeared a lot. Whenever actually I read a paper or an article, I found that this actually person appears to me. That means this is a very important source, okay? So that I have to look for. So that's actually how you're gonna start. Then you look at, okay, so how can I conduct this research? Then you have to look at studies who actually did similar, or they actually are similar to your research, to identify the gap in your research. For example, let's say if I'm conducting a research about business writing in a flipped classroom, okay? That means that I will look at the term flipped classroom. What does that mean? Who actually conducted research about flipped classroom? What the areas actually they looked at? Then, but remember, in the article, actually, you have to be very specific. It's not like you write a thesis. In a thesis, maybe you have to explain everything and identify everything. But in an article, you have to be very specific. So that means you have to look at the articles who actually conducted research about this particular topic in Saudi context or in the Arab world, okay? Then you have to specify until you find, okay, I can actually, maybe, okay, I found a similar one, but actually they use a different methodology than mine. That means that this is how actually I identify the gap. Maybe they use a different theory. Maybe they use a different research question.
That's cool. Yeah.
Maybe they conducted in a different context. Maybe they conducted in King Saud University, but I did it in I'm doing it in King Abdulaziz University.
Okay.
I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, actually, it's really making it more clear for me. But it's like I was thinking like how I can really expand my dimensions. Like, shall I depend upon the countries? Like, I will search about certain topic. For example, I'm from nursing college, so I'm looking for certain things regarding patient care. So shall I really look at what the East said, what the West said, what the France said? Yani, shall I like really expand my dimension, so I will really say, okay, I have a very solid literature review globally.
Yes,
Like I have to, yeah.
Yes. So as I said before, you have to, if your purpose, depending on your purpose, if your purpose is actually writing a thesis, so that means that you have more room, okay, to explain, for example, what being conducted about this particular topic globally, then, okay, what's actually being conducted, for example, nationally, okay, or in the Arab world, then, okay, then I have to specify it until I get to, but if I don't have that privilege in an article, okay, sometimes, you know, you don't have to explain everything from the beginning. Maybe you have to go directly to the topic if you do have only 1,000 words. Yeah, so you have to, يعني,
Straightforward, yeah.
be very, very specific about it.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Abeer. We have another question
Thank
here
you so
from North. What is the difference between abstract and introduction?
Okay, an abstract, actually, let's go back to the, okay. 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 So the abstract, actually, as I said, the abstract is only the section after the title. You see the title, then you put اللي هو ايش يسموها الخلاصة. Okay.
Maybe they use
خلاصة
numerical.
So they use actually
words.
different. Okay. So so this summary, actually, you have to write in this place. You have to write the aim or the objective of your research. Okay. Why you're conducting this? You have to describe the methodology that you employed. يعني simply, يعني you don't have to put you don't have to give very clear or very specific, description about the methodology. Then you put actually the summarizing the results, only 2-3 sentences, and then you put the principal conclusion.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Yes, and then actually this is actually the abstract. يعني هي زي خلاصة البحث أو اللي هو a summary of the manuscript. Okay. Then an introduction here is like a literature review. It's when you start with a broad idea, then you get it until it's narrow.
All right, thank you, Dr. Abeer. We have another question here from Layla, I guess. Yeah. Can I write hypotheses and research questions together?
Yes, I think yes, you can. Yeah, depending sometimes, you know, in your, as I said, in some articles, okay, or some journals, they ask actually for hypothesis. Okay, so you can write a research question and a hypothesis. In some areas or some fields, maybe they write only a research question. In some areas, they put only a hypothesis, but you can do both. I do have some students who actually did both. Yeah, actually, Dr. Rawan mentioned that there will be a workshop specified for writing a literature review that will be actually, I think it will be presented soon, inshallah. Maybe you can actually, yeah, you can register to that workshop, inshallah.
Yes,
Yeah.
inshallah. Next week we'll have the literature review workshop. And this Wednesday, inshallah, we'll have how to start writing proposal, your MA or PhD proposal, inshallah, starting from this Wednesday. We have another question here from Budur. What is the other thing that constitutes a good journal besides the impact factor?
Okay. Okay. So as I said, we do have something called Scopus. We do have ISI journals. Okay. So what is actually the difference between them? It depends. Of course, all of them, they are actually depending on the citation, the number of citation. Some of them, they are more popular in some majors than others. Okay. The websites that I provided to you, you can actually search for journal articles, and then you can find whether it's a Web of Science, we use it for ISI, and Scopus, we use it for Elsevier. Okay, so yeah, so both of them, they are excellent, but some you find, and for example, let's say in the area, for example, let's say in pharmacology, you find more ISI journals than other disciplines. Whereas, for example, in the area of business, you find more Scopus, okay, journals than the other journals, than ISI. So this is actually how you actually, techniques for of writing a scientific research paper. Actually, this is actually what I said in this whole workshop. Is actually when you're actually writing a scientific research paper, you have to think. Okay, so you first, for example, you have to think about first about the journal. Okay. The journal that you're gonna use, okay? Then you think about the title, what you're actually gonna conduct, and then you think about the authors, okay? Who gonna do this research with you? As I said before, you have to think about certain things as well. You have to think about who actually the publisher, who the number, the cost, the time, the awaiting time of decision. For example, if the article, actually, if the journal publishes in like once every 1 year, okay, and you are an MA student and you want to graduate, so this is not a good decision, yeah? So you have to think about this, the number of words. So all of these actually things you have to consider before publishing in a journal, because if you don't meet these guidelines or these things, you actually, maybe they will not get accepted. Okay, so for the person who actually asked me about referencing, EndNote is a good one, Mendeley, okay, and we have also Zotero.
All right, yes, and inshallah in 2 weeks from now, we'll have a workshop about just an introduction about Zotero and how to use APA style as well. So we'll have, inshallah, workshops about every aspect that we need in social science and humanities, inshallah. So we have another workshop here. Should I mention the software used at the abstract? Or in the abstract, I mean here. From Abdurrahman.
Okay, I see actually a question here. The tables, actually the tables, we usually put the tables and figures in the results chapter, but if you do have lots of figures and tables, maybe you put the important ones in the results and then you put the rest of them in the appendix. You can't put everything in the results.
Okay, we have a question also. Thank you, Dr. Abeer. A question from Abdul Wahid, I guess. Can I submit the same manuscript in more journals before publishing?
Unfortunately, no, you can't. Yeah, this is actually some journals, they make you sign actually a copyright agreement. So this is ethically, it's not correct. So you don't have to submit. I know that the submission time, the awaiting time actually is very long, but unfortunately you have to wait until you receive any response from the journal. Sometimes, you receive, it's not necessarily they get accepted. Sometimes it's get rejected. It's normal. So you don't have to be disappointed and saying, okay, this is the end of my life. You have to look at what the things that you want to correct, or what actually the comments, and then try to prove it and send it to another one. So this is actually a normal part of the process.
All right, I think we have one more question here from Turkey. He's asking here, are the words of captions, or I guess in the tables, are counted and the word counts?
Yes, I think so. Yes, if you're thinking about, usually actually the journal, they say to you this in the, they actually specify this in the template. They will say that actually this what's gonna count and what's not counting. So you have to read the instructions very carefully. Sometimes they say, okay, referencing is not including. Some of them, they say, okay, it's the word count, including the referencing.
Thank you. Abdullah, I guess Abdu is asking here, how could I figure out if my research is qualified for publishing on Q1 journals or not, just to save time?
I don't know if I understand the question, but
yeah, I think he's asking here about to see if his paper, or let's say the manuscript, is qualified enough to be published in Q1. I think it's difficult. I don't know. It's difficult to. I don't know. What is your thought on this?
Yes, I think if you followed, you have to put in your mind, you put all the effort that you do have in writing an article, and then you try to follow the template as specific as possible. If it's not, sometimes, the journal, when they refuse, or they refuse certain publication, it's not necessarily it is bad or it is something about it. Maybe also an important thing to think about is the scope of the journal. Okay, it's very important to look at that as well, because in each journal they do have a particular scope. Let's say if I want to publish, my topic is about hearing impairment students, okay? And then, for example, I look at, for example, here, action in teacher education. Okay, so the title actually of the journal, it's not matching my title. So I have to look at the scope. Is it matching or not? So sometimes it gets rejected because the scope of the article is not actually matching your title. Okay, so you have to read it carefully. The scope of what is actually the scope. Sometimes also they some journals, they say that they want mixed methods. And let's say if your article is only about qualitative, so that means this is not a good journal for you. Okay.
Oh yes, thank you. Yeah, there are many reasons for rejection. So, and you mentioned almost all of them. Thank you, Dr. Abeer. Are there any questions, comments, or suggestions? And please don't forget to complete the evaluation form, because we really need this form for evaluation and to improve our services in coming semesters, inshallah. If you have any suggestions, workshops, presentations, courses, Whatever suggestions you have, please write them or shoot us emails, or you have the form here. So if there is no more questions from the audience, I would like to thank Dr. Abeer for today's presentation, how evaluation for. Okay, here is the link.
Okay,
Yes,
I think
the workshop is very. Go ahead, Dr.
Yes, I think I'm saying what you're gonna say. Yeah, you can find it in YouTube channel for the. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Abeer, for this wonderful presentation. Inshallah, we will upload this presentation within 24 hours to our YouTube channel. So please subscribe and share the link. This is very useful workshop or presentation. Stay tuned, inshallah. We will have on the next workshop on Wednesday, yes, about how to write proposal for MA and PhD. All right, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you all. See you inshallah on Wednesday.
Thank you very much.